pantheistic way, because like I think, you know, if I'm like in nature or something like this, like I can really feel you know, like some sort of presence that's maybe not like earthly or worldly.
Okay.
But at the same time, like I would have to probably say that that's due to kind of like some mental, biological, evolutionary effect until I'm proven otherwise, and that definitely doesn't speak. I think like the difference between deism and like organized religion is then another huge leap which I'm not willing to make. Like I don't think that because I feel the presence of God that makes like, you know, the church real or something like this.
I see. So you're saying that it's more plausible that we can have like an idea or that God exists, but we don't necessarily have to make that jump of saying there's a specific religion or a specific God, whether it's Islam or Christianity.
Well,
That's true.
I just think that there are different stages. So like I think I'm an atheist right now. I think it takes a certain amount of like leap in belief to believe in like deism or pantheism or the fact that there's something extra natural, and then a whole nother leap of faith to believe in the core tenets of organized religion, that like let's say the Bible or the Quran is true or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, so...
And then another one to say that it has a positive effect on the earth, which is like I think another one after that, you know what I mean?
So you would say that it having a positive effect on society or like on an individual basis, for you would be like a criteria for it being true? Meaning that it would have a negative effect, then it would redact it from being true.
Well, it depends, right? If a religion, like I know like Satanists,
Yeah.
you know, they say, and you know, for me as an atheist, you have to, like you may not believe in Satanism or whatever, but like I have to take it with a certain grain of salt because I'm looking at it trying to...
From the outside.
From an outside perspective, third party trying to figure out what's right. So I would say that like for them, the existence of evil is a core tenet. So then that makes it more believable. But then like if, you know, if Islam, for example, is preaching peace, and then there's a lot of violence done in the name of Islam, that then affects my belief in its credibility, because I think that like it's something that it's saying it enacts in the world, and then I don't see that effect necessarily.
Okay, two things. Okay. Islam doesn't deny that evil exists. So Islam...
No, for sure.
So we in theism, we agree that God can allow for partial evil.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't entail like some sort of greater evil or ultimate evil, God will allow for that.
And what is the definition of? I'm unfamiliar with this. What is the difference between minor evil and ultimate evil?
So, for example, like you could take like a partial evil to be like some sort of immediate consequence that would lead to like a greater effect, like a better effect. For example,
so like Israel existing or something like that is like a minor evil.
Yeah, probably. Okay. Yeah, something like that.
In your eyes. Or
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like the ultimate outcome would be ultimate justice and humans being reconciled with God.
Okay.
But the point I'm trying to make is regarding the approach that the Muslims or the Muslim philosophers took regarding proving Islam, aka making that big jump from agnosticism to deism to theism, was two approaches mainly. We split into two approaches. The first approach was mainly the philosophical route, which is arguments purely from reason to prove that there's a God, that this God has power, omniscience, that has all these omni properties, he has wisdom, and then making that jump, saying that he must send prophets through humans, and then that Muhammad specifically is the final prophet. That's one approach that the philosophers take, but it was disliked by a lot of the Orthodox Muslims because it was a very philosophical approach and it had a lot of jargon, it had a lot of philosophical jargon attached to it. Now there's a simpler approach to actually making that jump that they took, which is simply looking at the man Muhammad and see if he made anything that spoke anything or did anything that broke known wicked necessity, aka the natural laws of the universe, such
like miracles.
Like miracles, or making prophecies, or making statements about the unknowable past that he couldn't have known, or about the unknowable future that he couldn't have known. Through these metrics, because we know from the natural world that these are unlikely, and he couldn't have done it naturally, then the only other explanation, or the inference to the best possible explanation, is that there will be some sort of divine being that will be communicating this information to him. And therefore he's able to act it out. Miracles, whatever, so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to miracles, it's a bit more inductive, meaning it's based more on probability because it's based upon like transmission, meaning we have...
Yeah, inductive reasoning based on probability.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense to me, but again, I think miracles are for the people that were there. Like, using my inductive reasoning and probability, I can say that it probably didn't happen, right?
Okay.
But then, like, if you were there and you saw it happen, more life to you, better for you, you have a reason to believe.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, we were even talking about how, like, miracles, like, they're oftentimes disregarded by atheists as not being proof. But the thing is that they're not really meant to be proof in a universal sense. They're meant to be proof for the people that were there. At least that's what
it depends. So, number one, when it comes to evidence for Islam, I agree with you that there can be better contemporary evidence that one can give to better suit for the agnostic mind. That's number one.
Yeah.
And number two, when it comes to ascertaining knowledge, for example, knowledge through empirical means, or through other means such as reduction and post-reduction, which simply means that if you have a chain of transmission, meaning I say something to you, you say something to your friend, right? And let's say we're able to verify that I'm a sound narrator, I'm someone who can be trusted, you are someone that can be trusted, well, both can temper with each other, and therefore that study in Western academia is called as reduction and post-reduction, can be then used as a source of knowledge.
Yeah,
Meaning it can epistemologically it can satisfy to know that this event did actually occur, especially if what we call it is massively transmitted.
Yeah.
So if it's massively transmitted, then it's impossible for, let's say, one person to make it up, because there's other chains of transmission that also narrated the same event.
I understand what you're saying, but the thing is, like, the way I understand the world, right, there are certain, like, natural laws, etc., right?
Yeah.
And so for me to take the leap to believe in a miracle, I have to believe that the probability of me taking, like, even if I believe, let's just grant for the sake of argument that everyone told the truth from the original people. So the original person, from the witnesses, they told people, and since then everyone told the truth.
Yep.
For me to believe that these miracles happened or existed, I would have to say that the probability of all the natural laws of which I and many others have based our lives on can be destroyed, or at least, like, put on pause or suspended, has to be higher than the probability of the witnesses lying to make a point that someone is a prophet.
Wait, so sorry,
right?
repeat that point one more time for me. You're saying that the probability of what is higher than
I'm not saying that all of the witnesses to Muhammad or Christ's miracles were lying about.
You're saying that the cost
I'm
of
saying
saying that
the
they...
probability of that, to me, is higher than the laws of nature being suspended. Even if we grant that henceforth from that point, everyone told the truth about it.
Okay.
You know?
So because you're saying that it's very improbable that the laws of nature would be suspended, therefore, because miracles are less probable than that, we can come to conclude that miracles probably didn't happen in comparison to the probability of natural law being suspended.
Exactly. Yeah,
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So the only thing I would say to that is that when you come to conclude that the probability of natural laws being suspended is something very unlikely, it would be based upon induction, meaning that you witness every day that the natural laws aren't suspended,
right?
And therefore you conclude that they probably weren't suspended in the past and won't be suspended in the future,
right?
But that is inductive in its means, it's inductive in its nature, just like the argument that I'm giving is also inductive in its means and its nature.
Right, but inductive arguments can have different levels of reasonability, in my case, that I would say. Like, we also are acting upon inductive reasoning, that I'm understanding what you're saying, that you're understanding what I'm saying, that the ground won't fall out between us, and that, like, I can be able to breathe in the next minute, you know? But then to compare these kinds of natural law inductive reasoning with, like, human, let's say, morality, which is constantly in flux. We see people acting ethically and unethically. I would say that, like, the inductive reasoning you're using, I would say, is
less probable.
Yeah, it's based on something that is less probable.
Well, we can look at something more concrete in this case, which, for example, things like prophecies.
Okay.
So when it comes to prophecies, they're a bit more...
You're talking about predicting the future, stuff like this.
Not prediction, because prediction is based upon, you look at data, you analyze the data, you look at the best outcome that could come from this.
Then what would you say Muhammad did?
So when it comes to prophecy specifically, they wouldn't be predictable. There would be something that would supposed to happen in the future, mentioned in detail, and it's unlikely to happen. So for example, in the Quran, there's a very clear prophecy found in the Quran. It's called Chapter of Rome, where it talks about how the Romans were defeated by the Persians, and in 3 to 9 years, the Romans are going to win over the Persians, right? So what we have is that at the time when this prophecy was made, according to a non-Muslim scholar known as Edward Gibbons, he specifically mentions that at the time when this prophecy was made, it was very unlikely for the Romans to defeat the Persians. So it was something that was said by the Prophet Muhammad, although it was very unlikely, that's number one, and it's time-bound, because it has a time gap, 3 to 9 years, that this is when it's going to happen, that the Romans are going to defeat the Persians. And this did happen. So it's very improbable for a few reasons. Number one, he didn't need to risk his prophet. He didn't need to say, well, look, this is going to happen. No, he didn't need to say it.
Right.
People already believed him as a prophet before he did that. Yet he still risked that on a very improbable means, because the Persians were winning over the Romans, and he gave a time-bound time frame for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand that. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this argument justice just because I'm much more familiar with Christianity.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that, like, if I'm going to compare it relatively to Christianity, I believe that you also said that Muhammad is the last prophet. You believe in Christ as a prophet.
Yes.
Yeah. So if we can just extrapolate that and say that you also believe in Christianity and kind of move the debate over, I would say that, like, probably for Islam, in a similar way to Christianity, I think that the Bible gets some things right. I also think it gets some things wrong. And so for me, it would be very impressive if the Bible got everything right, or if the Quran got everything right, right?
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, like, for example, yes, like for example, some people will say, like, the Bible is true because how could it have predicted that there was a beginning to the universe, right? And it will say, like, how could it have predicted this? I would say it's kind of like a 50-50 guess.
Yeah.
And then also it says something, so it's not exactly.
And it's even set in stone. We don't even know if there's a beginner or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but it also says some things like, you know, the earth was created before the sun, where now we know that the sun was created before the earth. So I would say that it would be very impressive to me and very convincing to me if the Bible were able to make truth claims about everything and be correct on
that correspond to
everything.
reality.
But for me, at least with Christianity, I don't see this happening. I see it kind of haphazardly happening. It's right about some things. It's wrong about other things. It's exactly what I would expect
From a religious book.
to see from a religious book that doesn't have any external or supernatural influence on it. And I would probably say the same applies to Islam if I looked further, is what I would say. Even though I don't know.
I love this objection. The response is going to be two-way.
Okay.
So the first one is that because I'm a Muslim and I believe in Christ, that therefore this binds me to some sort of level to Christianity.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, actually.
Yeah, this would just be incorrect just because if I'm accepting Christ as the Messiah, we as Muslims, we believe that the Bible did undergo change, meaning that we don't believe it's perfectly preserved. Why? Because we have an original source, aka Muhammad, who clarifies to us what is revelation, what is not revelation. So he
comes to correct it.
Yeah, exactly. He'll be the first point of contact, right? So because he's the first point of contact, we as Muslims aren't theologically affected by mistakes found within the Bible, right?
Fair enough.
If it's correct and if it lines up with what the Quran says and Islam says, then that's fine, we can accept it. If it's not, then it's not going to have any sort of theological implications. That's number one. And number two, regarding the Bible and what you expect to see from a text that's not influenced by God, you're right, you would expect mistakes, and we do find mistakes in the Bible, more mistakes. The difference is when you look at the Quran and we look at the claims that the Quran makes about the natural world, for example, every living thing being made out of water, so on and so forth, what you would find is that, I'm not going to say that it was unprecedented for his time. What I'm going to say is that it's factually correct to what we see in reality. Given the incentive that he didn't need to do that. For example, when the Quran...
but in a way, he kind of did need to do that because Muslims now, like yourself, are using it as evidence for atheists.
No, I'm not saying that the mere fact that he gets it right is evidence by itself. What I'm saying is that if...
it reinforces.
Exactly, it reinforces. And also, regarding the point, the Quran says that
But if I don't believe to begin with, how can it reinforce my belief?
That's why we're looking at the prophecies and we're looking at these more advantageous ways to prove Islam is true, and therefore would allow you to then bridge that gap. Okay. But before we get into that, the point I'm trying to make is that the Quran, for example, says that every living thing was made out of water. At the time when the Quran said that, there was a lot of theories passing around. Some Greeks said that everything was made out of water, not just living things, even non-living things. The Quran, seemingly, when it comes to making these scientific claims, it never picked up, if it was just merely reiterating what we had, it never picked up wrong details about things. It never said that, for example, that the sun was created before the earth was created before the sun. It never said that any things that are factually known to be false. It always gets it right. Not that it proves Islam, all it does is that it shows that it doesn't have the same hindrance as in the Bible. Right? So if we know that the Quran is independent of the Bible, and we know that the Quran has prophecies that come true, and we know that it factually corresponds to reality when it comes to scientific claims, we have good reason or justification beyond reasonable doubt we can take Islam to be true.
Yeah, I agree. But again, like I said, I don't think I can do this justice because I just haven't looked into it enough. I know in Christianity there are contradictions. I would also deduce that probably there are some kinds of minor contradictions in the Quran as well. Otherwise, I think more people would believe in it, like myself. But I would have to look into it until like.
Sounds good. I can give you a book recommendation of a very small book.
Is it the Quran?
No. Of a more specific one that talks about prophecies.
Okay, what is
it's called 101 Prophecies in Islam. It's composed of 101 prophecies that are accurate, that are time-bound, that are very specific about things that are about to come in the future, and they do come true. You can look into it, and you can also read the Quran for yourself to examine these claims that I'm saying.
Do you think I have to read it in Arabic?
No, you don't have to. But what's your name?
Nabil.
Nabil, nice to meet you, man. My name is Amir.
Amir, nice to meet you.
I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, guys.
Thank you. Man, beautiful conversation, beautiful guest. Yeah, just done.